My name is Ashley Marable. I'm with RTL AdAlliance. We are Europe's largest media network. We also are owners of Fremantle, which is the Idols and Got Talents, X Factors. We also own BMG Music, and we own Penguin Random House Publishing. So if Europe or YouTube in America is what you're interested in, you can talk to me. You can only imagine my excitement when Brand Innovators reached out to me to host this panel. I said, I can't wait to talk about the AARP. It's never too soon to think about retirement, right? Never. And then I read the invite a little more closely. So here I am, with the honor of presenting to you 5 really dynamic personalities, amazing people that I've had the pleasure of getting to know. I'm going to let you guess which one is the cordon bleu pastry chef, one is a professional singer, one is a breakdancer, one is a nuclear engineer. Anyway, amazing entrepreneurs, all of them. But I thought we would kick off this discussion about the Asian American community with a story that I wanted Michelle to share about something they recently did to bring the Asian American experience into her community at Sprinkles, where Michelle is the CMO.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for coming, everyone. Really happy to be here. As the CMO at Sprinkles, really honored to work with a brand that truly cares about, one, our values around empowering and supporting women, but also values centered around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And my job has really been about how do we translate that through food and storytelling. And one of the initiatives we kicked off 2023 with was a Lunar New Year cupcake in partnership with Gold House being here, my partner in crime on this. And it was super exciting because for me, it was very important to be able to create something that spoke to our community on a major holiday on a national scale for a brand like Sprinkles. And the best part was, obviously, our community, our Asian community, really responded well to the cupcake, but it had broad mass-reaching appeal. And to me, it's a testament to food. It's a testament to storytelling through food and how cultures really can be opened up and made accessible through that culinary storytelling. So it was the first time we actually broke the recipe for red velvet, red being an iconic color around the holiday, around good luck and good fortune. And so we took our #1 selling flavor and adapted it to make sense for the holiday with an almond cookie crust and an almond buttercream frosting. It was amazing. If you missed it, it'll probably be back at another time.
So, Bing, do you want to talk about the role you played in the cupcake?
I ate it. As my muffin top will show you if I took all this off. No, I think a couple things. Michelle really gets so much credit and is demonstrative of inclusive work only is prioritized in so much as the C-suite prioritizes it. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking diversity, equity, inclusion should be relegated to an HR function, but the reality is until the CMO cares, it honestly doesn't matter at the scale that it should. I think the second piece that we were really inspired by from Michelle to make this an annoying alliterative thing because we're brand innovators is when we think about our work at Gold House or at Sprinkles and so forth, we think about sort of the 4 C's, as it were. So one is it commercially viable? There's a gross misperception that cultural work is charity work, and none of that work actually lasts. This is a commercial imperative for a variety of reasons. Exhibit A, it became the 8th best-selling cupcake in the nation. So commercially success, which is also lucky if you're Asian. You know, 8 is like our 7 or our 3. Yeah. So it's like, check that. The second of the C's is critically acclaimed. Is it good? So because of Michelle, she broke her famous red velvet recipe for this. So it's not just a commercially viable cupcake, it is a delicious cupcake. Moreover, the almond, for those of you who had the red velvet is a little too sweet. And so the almond cookie crust actually neutralizes the sweetness. So it's actually critically acclaimed there too. Third is culturally important. Lunar New Year is one of the only celebrations that unites most of the Asian diaspora. And then fourth, that I think we're now as a community in a position to care about is character. We need to see the good girls and the good guys win. Period. There's a lot of assholes out there who do good work, but I think we now have enough great work, and I think this the panel is demonstrative of that, where we can let the great work from the good ones win. And Michelle's just a delightful partner to work with. Really easy. It's no ego, it's no BS, everything's on the table, and It's why we're going to have at least 1 or 2 other collaborations coming this year. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so Gold House was just really privileged to be able to be that sort of cultural thought partner to make sure it was culturally specific, sensitive, all that. I'll give you one last thing, so you asked me specifically what we did. As many of you know, not everyone in the Asian diaspora celebrates Lunar New Year. Moreover, while it is the year of the rabbit for some, it is the year of the cat for the Vietnamese community. So you'll see a lot of other brands when they celebrate Lunar New Year have rabbits. That's actually not culturally inclusive, particularly for the Vietnamese diaspora, which is very important to us. And so instead, we opted for a flower that was sort of universally applicable. So it's one specific example of sort of the cultural nuance and specificity that we like.
Thank you. So Ayesha, to you, from cupcakes to biscuits, you are an Asian American making Southern comfort food.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, you know what? I wish I didn't have to explain that, right? Like, why can't biscuits be American? Why can't I just exist in that world, right? I think that's been one of the biggest challenges when I started Mason-Dixie. I mean, my mom is Korean. She started her career in the culinary field making fried chicken and chitlins. I mean, she trained under some of the best people in Baltimore, and I took a lot of that calling back when I decided to start a fast casual, fresh, natural Southern comfort food brand. And it only really started to kind of hit me in the face when I started the consumer product business, right? Because I'm going out to the world and I'm telling people about these amazing frozen biscuit dough pucks that we sell nationwide. It's the #1 selling frozen bread brand. But then when I go into a meeting, right, like, it's like, well, you don't look like you grew up on biscuits. Well, what the hell does somebody that looks like, you know, like, I don't know, like, why should I have to substantiate the product that I'm making? And why can't I make something truly American and iconically American, but be Asian American and be proud of that? You know, speaking of the diaspora and the differentiatedness of being Asian, there's still a lot of Orientalism that's involved in Asian identity. My dad is Palestinian, still part of the Asian continent, right? My mom is Korean. Those are two very polar opposite cultures, and I live with that conflict every day, mentally. But you know, that's what's represented as who I am. That's my identity, and thus, you know, I think part of why I think Mason-Dixie was so successful was because of this, like, overarching ability to transcend culture and all unify everybody under something as iconically American as a biscuit, as iconically American as a cupcake, right? Like, I mean, those are the things that I think are important. And people need to see that anyone of any color, any faith, any creed can make something amazing. So, you know, for us, I think at the core of it, I do hope and want to see more from a media and marketing opportunity side of people highlighting individuals, founders, whatever, of any color. If they're Asian, wonderful, but not having it to be so typecast that it must be Asian flavors, Asian recipes, authenticity based on what people think something is, right? You know, the world's evolved around that, so.
Great. So we've got a thirst worked up after cupcakes and biscuits. Sandro, you've just launched Sanzo. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So we're the first Asian-inspired sparkling water made with real fruit plus no added sugar. I apologize. I've been literally saying this maybe about... Do I?
Double it.
Do I need to double it? Is that better? I'll give you this one. This one is better. Sorry. I've been literally saying that about 3,000 times over the last 5 days. It's coming from LA at Expo West. We got started about three and a half years ago, and to be honest with you, like, a lot of our inspiration was the work that Bing and his whole crew were doing, promoting films and like Crazy Rich Asians, which became the 6th highest grossing rom-com of all time. It was #1 at the box office in no small part due to the work that Bing and the Gold House team had been doing, and we felt like, pardon me. But there was really a need in the world for a brand to represent and celebrate the progress that the Asian American community had made in such a short period of time. Growing up, I mean, I would say even growing up, like just about 5-6 years ago, you know, I'd be drinking brands just like Topo Chico, Perrier, San Pellegrino, brands that really have a cultural heritage backing behind it that folks would get really proud behind. but there wasn't a brand like that for the Asian American community and to represent the progress that our cultures had made. And so that was really the impetus for the brand. And proud to say that just 3.5 years in, we're already sold in every single Whole Foods in the country. So if you're walking down doing some grocery shopping, we'll be at your local grocery store and expanding pretty rapidly.
Fantastic.
And sorry again, I am. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another question in a minute, so get your voice ready. Zeena, though, you have nothing to do with food. You have,
other than eating it a lot, as you can tell.
but you've done some amazing work at 2K as the head of digital marketing, but you also have some philanthropic work that you do with the Asian community. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, totally. I feel like this mic is off, but maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just now. Yeah, there we go. All right. We have imbalance here, and we gotta make sure to fix that, guys. So I'm head of digital community marketing at 2K Games, kind of a new thing. Came from the music industry. If anyone was here before and kind of heard my spiel then, brand marketing, lifestyle marketing in whole. We were just having a conversation before how, often it's thought that Asians maybe aren't playing key player roles in some of these companies and really driving the narrative there. And it's incredible to see. Look at this panel, by the way. I'm gonna take a second, Ashley, before we go next. Everyone here is gonna introduce themselves because everyone here is a badass. Like Bing is the king, by the way. Bing is our king. But the work that I do with my nonprofit organization that I co-founded with 2 other Asian American women, because we saw in the music industry at the time, there was nobody who looked like us championing and mentoring, grassroots communities. And, we were 3 people working a full-time job that wanted to give back to the community and really build something substantial and tell stories about people who had actually made it through and brought it to like the top levels of their career, which we didn't see often because there was nobody who looked like us. So that work kind of started as a passion project and actually became a nonprofit, which we are today. So check us out, Asian American Collective. But yeah.
Say that slower so they can hear it.
Asian American Collective.
There we go. Now they go.
Thank you. One more time. AC for all y'all. Gold House. But I'm just so proud of that work and seeing the inspiring and breakthrough work that Bing and company are doing, just everybody on this panel, to give a different face to who we are culturally is just incredible and inspires us as a community. Even Pearl. Thank you. Shout out Pearl. Because we've talked about this before. We need people putting Asian Americans to the forefront because we're fucking powerful. And we make shit happen. All right, so we're gonna do a quick intro. I'm Zeena Koda, I'm head of digital community marketing at 2K Games and co-founder of Asian American Collective.
I'm Sandro, Roco, founder and CEO of Sanzo.
Oh, there you go. I'm Ayeshah, founder and CEO of Dixie Foods.
I'm Big Chen, I'm CEO of Gold House.
I'm Michelle Wong, Chief Marketing Officer at Sprinkles.
Look at that, powerful.
So, Sandro, I warned you. You mentioned to me when we chatted 3 incredible marketing partnerships that you've done. One was with Turning Red. One was the Marvel film
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten
that
Rings.
one. But the one that a lot of you mentioned to me when we talked, unrelated to Sanzo, was 38 at the Garden. And an amazingly inspiring film if you haven't seen it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jeremy Lin and what he did for Asian American culture. I guess it's now 12, 13 years ago?
Yeah, I could kick us off here. I mean, the number one thing I could say, this is, I think, irrespective of his fame and his impact, is that his human matches his celebrity. Whatever emotion you may have had around, if anyone here is a basketball fan, around his...
Maybe we should tell them who Jeremy Lin is.
So for folks who aren't aware, the voice, puberty, Jeremy Lin was an undrafted point guard from Harvard who is also a 2-time state champion at Palo Alto High School. But effectively, I think it's fair to say, due to systemic racism, was not drafted and in many ways was passed on by many an NBA team. And when he finally got his shot for about a 13-day stretch, put on one of the greatest displays in the NBA. and most notably capped by a 38.7 assist performance in Madison Square Garden against the Lakers, who were just coming off
Against Kobe Bryant,
who was just coming off of back-to-back NBA championships. And if anyone watched that famous game, in the second half, Kobe was even saying, "No, I want him. I want to guard him," and Jalen still torched him. And it just and I think that performance in and of itself would have been amazing. But then, as the film 38 at the Garden, which I think got snubbed by the Academy for best short doc, but as the documentary showed, it wasn't just his performance; it was the grace and it was the combination of grace and power through which he carried decades of, I guess, a feeling of like non-representation of Asian Americans within the broader sports community. And so, I mean, I'll let other folks chime in, but at least for me, I'm Filipino, which means I must have played basketball growing up, which I did. Not well. I had the dream being 5'6", making the NBA. Jeremy lived out all of it for myself. But for my own personal journey, it was a partnership that we, and I particularly, had to have.
please.
I mean, for me, that the moment where we see Jeremy take that game-winning shot, and there's this discussion with Ronnie Chang and Hassan Minhaj talking about the audacity to take space, the audacity to own who you are. And I think this is an example of why that's so meaningful. When you lack visibility, when you lack a place where you're dismissed or not even considered in every sector of life as an Asian American, having that audacity to do what you can do best feels like a momentous thing. And it was so inspiring to see that. And I think that's something that I carry and really try and manifest regularly. I mean, it's why things like a cupcake's not just a cupcake. It's seeing ourselves, our culture, ourselves represented, and all of these movements, having us as a panel matters, and it makes a difference, and it helps all of us fill that space in ourselves and have that audacity.
Anybody else want to talk? Ayesha.
Obviously, it's it's a really good euphemism, the basketball, a biscuit. It's the same identity crisis, right? This imposter syndrome that I feel like Asian Americans feel a lot if they're not typecast again into those Oriental isms, right, that people are expected to see. I mean, at the end of the day, he's over 7 feet tall. How could he not be good at basketball? How could you not look at that man and go, throw him the ball, right? But no one did, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, I think that game-winning shot, that flow where he was just like, give it to me, right? But he didn't, like, take it. He didn't, shoulder somebody to do it. He was very Asian about even taking the ball, right? It was like this perfect mashup of, like, Asian identity plus just doing it well. And I think more and more we're showing up that way. I think in pop culture it's just finally starting to happen. I personally hope it's more and more in product, more and more in media, right? We got to show up and just show the world that we're better than just math, science, and all the other stereotypes, right? Like, we can play ball too.
Zeena. You have an NBA product that you market.
I mean,
it's really good.
Yeah. Watch out for 24, guys. I mean, I think overall, cupcake's more than a cupcake, right? It's the symbolism of somebody taking control of a talent that they know they have and that they're bringing to the world, which is a blessing to us, by the way. When we're watching somebody's talent shine, it is a blessing to watch those things. He broke a barrier. And he broke a stereotype. You look, there's so many, people who are of mixed descent too. I'm half Asian, by the way.
Woo, Hoppas represent. But that doesn't diminish, my Asian identity either, because to me, my mom was very Filipino, right? She will never let me forget, I'm from the third world, over and over. And it's one of those things where, like, in whatever way that your culture manifests and what you identify with and how you bring it to the world, people like Jeremy help us to break barriers, especially when it comes to the NBA and kind of like organized sports, because the Asians, unfortunately, are very underrepresented in, especially, leagues here in the U.S. Like, we just don't have the amount of presence that, other cultural groups do too. So it's great to see, stories like Jeremy's being told
because there's stories that people need to hear, and it inspires other Asian Americans that are athletic to actually like see somebody who potentially looks like them being successful.
I thought Kenny Smith might have put it best in the documentary. The TNT announcer, the former NBA pro and North Carolina guard, he said Jeremy Lin was the worst example of talent evaluation of all time.
Amen.
Which is another way of saying he was stereotyped and overlooked. So that was great. I can't keep the suspense any longer. Anybody want to guess who the cordon bleu pastry chef is on the group? Sure enough, the CMO of Sprinkles.
Shocker.
She's making dinner after.
I will cook for you anytime, Zeena.
And the guy that runs the water company is a nuclear engineer.
Former and the worst nuclear engineer. It's a good thing you don't want.
Anyway, why don't we open it up for questions for folks? Unless, is there anything else we didn't cover?
I was going to add one last bit to Ayeshah's point around just like, we are at a moment, and we just came from this trade show in Anaheim, California, and I honestly believe we're still only in chapter 1 of this wave that's been happening. I mean, you've been in the industry for a little bit longer than I have been, but just in a year's time, the amount of new brands, new creators, and I would imagine Bing's in the same camp too, that are now coming out and putting forth truly like unbelievably high quality work. It's like, I'm like, part of the reason why I also lost my voice is so much of my last week was just talking to this new wave of founders, creatives, operators, folks who have just been over the last several years, and maybe to a certain degree, inspired by the Stop Asian Hate movement and like wanting to create beautiful things. Like, we're in a moment right now where there's so much beauty being created, and also, a lot of us, run our own companies. I can honestly say for so many of us here, like whether it's like certain teams that are running or the brands that are running, we're fucking amazing operators too. Yeah. And just
amen. Say it louder, Sandro.
And I just really feel like we're just at a very special, pivotal moment right now. That's like the ripple effects we're all going to feel this for the next years to decade plus. So that's the only thing I just wanted to say is like, and also thanks everyone for coming. But like, yeah.
But I'll jump on that too, because I think what's really awesome here too is we're the antithesis of what we were told to be. Quiet. Sit there just silently waiting your turn, right? And just show with prowess and pride, no, we had to be loud the last few years. We had to be very un-Asian in how we approach these issues and visibility. And I'm really proud of that. That is an evolution, I think, for us, our people, our cultures, to be able to be loud, proud, and out in front, talking about the issues that matter most to us and our identities and how they manifest, especially in the product space. So, like, you guys had that happy hour at the booth, and it was like, I couldn't even get in. And I was like, move! I belong here! And I couldn't even get in. It was just that much support and that many people showing up. I've never seen that, ever.
No, but it's true. I mean, this just to perpetuate the wave, and I know we're Asian, so we should say all Asian things, but Kakao, for instance, in Korea, just acquired a majority stake in SM. They are now poised to be the first and one of the largest non-West-based, Western, I should say, based music labels in the world. They now also own Hype, and so there's a whole sort of move there. I think the other data point that I think about that's in these two's cohort is there's this colloquialism that is salsa outsells ketchup, which is numerically true. Sriracha outsells salsa, but now Fly by Jing outsells sriracha. And so it's an Asian-founded business from a woman founder that's only 3 years old that now outsells sort of the biggest sauces in the world. So this is definitely a trend. I think the other thing that Jeremy reflects, that everyone here reflects as well, that Michelle Yeoh reflects, is that we're now in a generation of millennials and Gen Z, which is 50% of the population, that are strong because of and also in spite of our race. And we know how to hold both in sort of that undulative duality at once. I think one of the sort of misperceptions, again, is that a lot of times when we talk about identity, it's a charitable sort of D&I thing. But the reality is, as Sandro just mentioned, it's also about excellence. If you look at the stats stats, for instance, with Asian founders, there's a reason so many top founders are Asian. We can debate all day long, but the stats are that 15 to 25% of the half unicorns in the last decade were founded by Asian American founders. This doesn't even include the 50 unicorns in India. It doesn't include China and so forth, where that number skyrockets. And then on the other side of the founding table, 48% of the Forbes Midas list is Asian, and this is globally. So we control not only nearly half of the most successful funders, but also are for some reason very good at founding. And so period. And the numbers don't lie. So again, this is not a D&IBJ priority. This is a commercial imperative. And then the final thing I'd say is history, of course, teaches us so many things. The most lucrative efforts in the world have always started niche. So if you look at the creative industry where some of us will operate, the most lucrative film franchise in the world is, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. People look at that franchise that's now, 13 years old, and take for granted that it's so large. People forget that in the late 80s and early 90s, it was sold for parts in its comic book. This is why you can't see the Hulk in anything now, because of rights issues. And it was a few niche, in most cases fanboys, who read and wrote these comic books that have now become the creative titan in the world that's the envy of every Hollywood studio. You look at the most creative franchise period in the world, it's Pokemon. A rinky-dink video game of little animals that fight each other and have no practical utility in the real world. It's the most lucrative franchise in the world, period. And so too, I think things like being Asian, it's not just about identity. It's about focusing on communities that have been traditionally unseen and marginalized, which is an untapped economic opportunity, particularly those who have demonstrated en masse that they outperform others, not only in funding, but also founding.
Pokemon are cute, though.
I love Pokemon.
Asians love cute things, right? Can I just add one last point there? I mean, I do think it's our responsibility, too. It's so amazing to see this awakening and how we're all finding our identities and being vocal with our identities. I also find it to be a responsibility to be a good steward with other communities as well, and to embrace other communities and show them Asian culture and be somebody that they can ask open questions to. Being intersectional, I think, is just so important, especially for any minority group, to help really just bring us more depth and more strength together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bing. That was great. Questions?
Questions? Yeah.
Hi. Ooh, hello. Well, thanks for an awesome panel so far. And as someone who's in the marketing industry, I go to a lot of these talks for the AAPI community, and the room never looks like this. Because usually it looks like a room full of other Asian people. So I think with this opportunity, I would love to hear what the message would be. Because I think one of the things we often talk about is how do we get the message out beyond just our community and have other people listen, and this seems like a great opportunity. So what are some of the things that you'd want everyone to hear to be to either enlist them, get them into what our efforts are and overall initiatives?
Come to our Asian cult. Break bread with people. This goes above and beyond Asian, and that maybe I'm we're Filipino, right? So we're everybody, come on. I feel like we're friends, everybody, right? Break bread with people, bring people into your home, teach them of your traditions, no matter what your background are. I think that applies to Asian American traditions too, and Asian traditions, because some of our stuff is different. Smells different, tastes different, feels different. But being able to bring that to other cultures, I think, is extremely important. And that is what we offer back to the world, right? This is us, our flavor, and the way that we show up.
I was just going to say, at Mason Dixie, we're a very diverse brand. We're 40% diverse, 70% women run, right? But at the same time, from an Asian perspective, myself and our director of product, Denise, are really holding it down. But it's such a piece of our identity. So every year for the last 5 years, we celebrate Lunar New Year as a group. It is everyone's favorite fucking holiday. Thanksgiving, nope. Everybody loves the Lunar New Year. They love the food. We play mahjong. They're addicted, right? I think exposure, bring it into the office, bring it into your companies, make it a part of everyday culture. Don't just let it be something that is fantasized out there and is just something that is you celebrate with your homies and your family. Do it with the people that you work with, and you'd be surprised at how embracive people are, because our fucking culture is awesome, right? It just is.
I'd also say there's and Judy, you know this better than anyone. Judy also does the most incredible work at Pinterest, so give it up, Judy. Experience-defining person. No, there's a trend in a lot of marketing vehicles where we used to have sort of distributed multicultural budgets, and now all minorities are lumped in a single multicultural budget. And it's for a variety of potentially practical commercial reasons. But I think the challenge here is when you try to speak to everyone, as we all know, you speak to no one. And so I'd say to be smart enough, especially in this recessive phase, and really brave enough to still market very specifically to people, because only when you market specifically can you actually spend the time to uncover what is actually universalizable experience. We all have we all have families, we all have parents, we all have loved ones, we all have careers, we all have ambitions. I think the second piece is, as Zeena rightfully articulated, there's a lot of concentricity between minority communities because there's a lot of concentricity among humanity. And so to give you an example and pick on two of us and do the whole minority thing of pedestaling just a few of us, the Latino and the Asian diasporas are the fastest growing populations in this country. In 15 years, we will be the single largest races, and a disproportionate majority of multinational growth for companies based in the United States is coming entirely from South America and Asia, period. And so if you look at both of our diasporas, we actually are quite concentric. We all grow up in multi-generational households. 70+% of us grow up in bilingual households. We have this inextricable tie to our mother continents in a way that is negotiable, undulating, terrifying, so forth and so on. And so I'm not implying that we're the same, but what I am implying is if you are specific enough with the Asian diaspora, there are transferable learnings that can be then transposed to other communities, in this case, the Latino cohort. So I'd say that's the one. Get rid of the whole multicultural sort of broad bucket, go even more specifically. Final thing I'll say is, I know as a fellow sort of cheap Asian how difficult it is to get more money in fewer places. And so I would say that there's a misperception among marketers that higher dollar value equals higher value, and that's not always the case. I'd say if you're trying to market specifically, especially traditionally marginalized folks, yes, you should pay us what you're worth, but you should also be smart enough to know where we are, and that doesn't always cost as much money. So to pick on Sandro, the reason he has the amazing Turning Red, most viewed Disney film, by the way, in history in its debut up until that point, to Shang-Chi, the first Asian model superhero, is because of a Southeast Asian first princess known as Raya in The Last Dragon. Now, Raya and Jan Coleman, who, by the way, is a black executive at Disney, was smart enough to recognize that it was a South Asian film and that she should probably have a Southeast Asian film, and should probably be smart enough to have a Southeast Asian branded set of brands. This is, of course, why she went to Sandro. Now, she could have gone to other brands like Fortune 50s and paid 7-8 figures for a brand that we all know, love, and maybe know too well. Or she'd go to someone else and pay him a few 6 figures, but would change the life of this founded business and also achieve specificity. So I'm not implying that you should not pay Sandro Coca-Cola prices, because you will someday, by the way. In some places you already do, or some of you already do, as you should, and we thank you for your service and your belief. But what I am trying to imply is there are smarter ways to get better things done, especially if you go to communities that have been untouched.
Can I just say that I just fulfilled a bucket list with this panel? The word data was never spoken.
Nice. Good data point.
Data.
Any other questions from the crowd? Yeah?
I follow Michelle Wong on Instagram, and I saw that she went to the Gold House activation in Sundance, and I got so much FOMO. I'm pretty sure, I live in Salt Lake City, so I tried to come, but I think it was sold out. It was so popular. Can you tell us a little bit about the launch of Gold House right on Main Street in Park City during Sundance, and if you're going to do more and more of that kind of stuff? And I really
so embarrassed.
appreciate, because watching 16 Candles growing up and seeing how Asians were depicted in movies back in the day was really sad. It fires up more people in our schools to do what they do to us growing up. So I'm really excited to see more work of what you've done. Yeah.
I'm so embarrassed we didn't invite you, bro. We'll fix that next year. It'll be much bigger. No, Gold House had the privilege of partnering up with a litany of organizations, notably Daniel Day Kim and his 3AD in Media, to launch what is the first official recognized Asian house at Sundance. And it was really beautiful, not just because it was the first of its kind, but it was a political statement because until how do I say this? There are sort of two schools of thought of sociocultural change. We call it take the house and build your own house. A lot of us, especially on the founding side, say, well, screw the system and incumbents. They don't get us. Let's build our own house. And that's all fine and well. But the reality is until you are complicit in changing a broken system, you will forever be outside that system. And so that's why having an official, recognized, very expensive presence at Sundance, which is the highest independent film collective and institution in all the land, was so important to us. So I think that was one. The second really important thing is we all know events are ephemeral. And so unless it can climactically, how do you say, I guess climax and then reset a more perennial or perpetual effort, it's not useful. And so a lot of us use that as a vehicle to launch new efforts, not just to celebrate film there. And then I think the third thing, going back to pick on Zeena again, is we also, and this was a non-negotiable for the Gold House end, convened all the multicultural houses for the first time in Sundance's, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50-year history, which is honestly pathetic that it took this long. But I think it was so imperative to show that the world is not trying to be built for and by Asians, but it is on our diaspora in particular to try to proactively link. So we brought in Black House, Macro, Illuminated, Respectability, GLAD, and so forth. And it was just sort of the most beautiful convening of everybody. That's all we did. Thank you as well to Sanzo, Sparkling Water, for being there. Thank you also to Michelle from Sprinkles. We also, just to hit the creative imperative, had the best food in all of Sundance, and it was we had 2 Michelin star Korean steakhouse Cote, and then we had LA-based Chifa, by far the most expensive food as well. But that's how we got to get it done.
Also, very delicious Panda Express.
And very delicious Panda Express. Yes.
Any other questions from the crowd? Do you have a question? Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Can we give a round of applause to the amazing panel, please? Thank you.